Hi there, bookworms. My name is Teacher Maria, and welcome to this channel. I hope you guys are doing great today. And today, I will read to you a story. Ta-da! The Ladybird Bedtime Tales. And we will read 8 classic stories retold by Mandy Archer and cover illustrated by Estelle Corke. Come and read along with me. Rapunzel, based on a fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm, illustrated by Tamsin Henrichsen. Once upon a time, a poor man was walking past Witch's garden when he saw some delicious green lettuces. "My wife is so hungry," he whispered. "How she'd love to eat a bowl of fresh salad." The man tiptoed into the garden and pulled up a lettuce. Suddenly, the witch appeared behind him. "How dare you steal from me?" she snarled. "You shall pay for my lettuce with your firstborn child." Within a year, the man's wife gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. They did not think or speak of the witch's strange promise. One night, when the couple were sleeping, the witch peered into their bedchamber. "You will be mine," she said, lifting the baby out of her crib. "I will call you Rapunzel." Rapunzel never saw her mother or father again. When she reached 12 years old, the witch locked the child in a tall tower at the edge of a forest. Over the years that followed, Rapunzel became the most beautiful maiden in the land, with long blonde hair that gleamed like spun gold. Every evening, the witch came to visit Rapunzel. She stood at the bottom of the tower and called to the window above, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." The girl would then throw her golden locks out of the window for the witch to climb up. One evening, a prince was riding through the forest. He heard Rapunzel singing a beautiful tune from high up in her tower and stopped his horse to listen. Just then, the witch arrived. The prince was astonished to hear her shriek, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." The witch climbed up the tower just as she always had done. When the witch had gone, the prince went up to the tower and also cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel threw down her golden locks and, to her surprise, found the prince climbing up. "You are too beautiful to be locked up alone," said the prince. "I will help you escape." The next evening, the witch climbed up to see her prisoner as usual. She tugged and pulled as she clambered up Rapunzel's golden tresses. The girl winced in pain. "Ouch!" she frowned. "The prince did not hurt me, so when he climbed up my hair..." The witch was furious. "Ungrateful child," she spat. "You will never betray me again." The witch grabbed Rapunzel's golden hair in her furs and hacked it off with a pair of scissors. When the prince rode to the tower the next day, his heart was full of excitement. He tethered his horse beneath the window and called up, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." The girl's golden locks fell down from the window just as they had done the night before. The prince climbed up. However, when he got to the top, the prince was pale in shock. The cruel witch had tricked him, and it was she who was waiting for him in the tower. "Back down you go," she cackled, pushing the prince away from the window. "Now you will never see your Rapunzel again." The prince fell down, down, and landed in a bed of thorns. The brambles pricked and scratched his eyes. "Help!" he cried. "I cannot see." Rapunzel reached out to help her prince, but the witch dragged her away. Many months passed. The blind prince wandered aimlessly across the land, searching for Rapunzel, but he couldn't find her anywhere. One day, he was walking past a lake when he heard the sound of a girl singing. The music was sorrowful and sweet. The prince instantly recognized the beautiful voice he'd heard coming from the tower. "Rapunzel," he called. "Could it be you?" Rapunzel was fetching water. As soon as she heard the prince's cry, she ran over to him. "Yes," she gasped, "it is me." The prince took Rapunzel in his arms. The maiden was so overcome with happiness that she began to weep. Her tears fell on the prince's eyes, and all at once he could see again. As they rode back to the prince's palace, Rapunzel explained that the witch was dead and she was now free. Soon afterwards, the prince married his Rapunzel in a day of joy and celebration. The couple lived a long and contented life, adored by all who knew them. The end. The Emperor's New Clothes, based on a story by Hans Christian Andersen, illustrated by Marina Lee Ray. Once upon a time, there was a kingdom ruled by a vain and wealthy emperor. Instead of worrying about his subjects, the emperor cared only about his appearance. Tailors and fashion designers were summoned to the castle every day to present the emperor with new doublets, coats, and pantaloons. "I'm bored of these outfits," the emperor would soon say. "I need something different." Most afternoons, the emperor and his wife took a stroll through the city streets. The emperor liked to show off his latest finery and look out for new baubles and trinkets to buy. He never stopped to say hello to the people that he passed. One day, a weaver came to the kingdom to sell his wares. He overheard the emperor boasting about his passion for fashion. The next morning, the cunning weaver went to see the emperor. "I am the finest clothes maker in the land," he declared. "I can make you an exquisite outfit, but you will have to pay handsomely for it." The emperor agreed at once. He waited impatiently for his new outfit to be made. 2 weeks later, the weaver returned holding a golden clothes hanger. "I present your new clothes," he announced. "They are so fine, only clever people can see them." The emperor blinked. The clothes hanger looked empty to him. Magnificent," said the emperor, handing the weaver a bag of gold coins. When the weaver had gone, the emperor peered closely at the clothes hanger. No matter how hard he looked, he couldn't not see anything there. Rather than admit that he might be stupid, the vain emperor decided to put the new clothes on. The emperor walked into his wife's sitting room. "Do you like my fine new clothes?" he asked. "Only clever people can see them." The emperor's wife gasped in surprise. Her husband appeared to be completely naked. "Yes," the emperor's wife finally replied. "They're splendid." Pleased, the emperor paraded back out of the chamber. When he had gone, his wife sank back into her chair. Although she couldn't see any clothes, she would never admit to being stupid. Next, the emperor decided to show his new clothes to his most trusted advisor. "Do you like my fine new clothes?" the emperor asked. "Only clever people can see them." The advisor turned a pasty color. "Yes," he finally replied. "They're very grand." The emperor beamed from the ear to ear. The advisor didn't know what to think. Although he couldn't glimpse a single thread, he would never admit to being stupid. When it was time for his afternoon stroll, the emperor couldn't wait to stun his subjects with wonderful new clothes. For the first time ever, he talked to one of the women and asked the market stalls, "Do you like my fine new clothes?" he asked. "Only clever people can see them." The woman's cheeks blushed scarlet. Yes, the woman finally replied. They're wonderful. The emperor nodded his head in a very regal manner. But when his back was turned, the woman gulped. She hadn't spotted the stitch, but she didn't want to admit to being stupid. The emperor was happily parading up and down the street when he noticed a small boy galloping at him. Do you like my fine new clothes? He asked. Only clever people can see them. New clothes? Replied the boy. But you're not wearing anything at all. Suddenly, the emperor felt rather chilly and bare. He looked down at himself and realized that the weaver had tricked him. Oh no, he cried. I have no clothes on. The shamed emperor ran all the way back to the castle. He would never be so vain and foolish again. The end. The Enormous Turnip, based on Alexander Afanasyev's retelling of a traditional Russian folktale, illustrated by Richard Johnson. Once upon a time, an old man planted some turnip seeds in his vegetable patch. He watered and weeded the patch all spring. Soon, turnip stalks began to pop out of the ground. The man gazed at his vegetable patch in amazement. One of the turnips had grown much bigger than the rest. It was enormous. I'd like the turnip for my tea, decided the old man. He tugged and heaved at the turnip with all his might, but he couldn't pull it up. The turnip was much too wide to dig out and much too heavy for one old man to pull up. The old man leant on his garden fork, wondering what to do. The enormous turnip seemed to be getting bigger with every passing minute. That turnip smells tasty, he said. If only I could get it out of the ground. On the other side of the garden, the man's wife was sitting and enjoying the sunshine. Maybe she can help me, said the old man. The old man called out to his wife. Will you help me pull up this enormous turnip? He cried. The old woman put down her magazine and nodded. I'd like the turnip for my tea, she replied. The old man and the old woman tugged and heaved at the enormous turnip with all their might, but they couldn't pull it up. The old woman called out to a boy playing in the garden next door. Will you help us pull up this enormous turnip? The boy stopped kicking his football and nodded. I'd like that turnip for my tea, he said. The old man, the old woman, and the boy tugged and heaved at the turnip with all their might, but they couldn't pull it up. The boy called out to a girl taking a stroll with her dog. Will you help us pull up the enormous turnip? He cried. The girl stopped walking and nodded. I'd like the turnip for my tea, she smiled. The old man, the old woman, the boy, and the girl tugged and heaved at the turnip with all their might, but they couldn't pull it up. The enormous turnip did not budge an inch. The girl called out to her little white dog. Will you help us pull up this enormous turnip? The dog opened one eye and wagged his tail. I'd like the turnip for my tea, he thought. The old man, the old woman, the boy, the girl, and the dog tugged and heaved at the turnip with all their might. Suddenly, the enormous turnip came out of the ground with an enormous pop. Laughter rang around the garden as the old man and friends tumbled back onto the grass. The old man invited everyone to an enormous celebration tea. There was enough turnip for seconds and what besides. The friends agreed that it was the tastiest turnip they'd ever eaten. The end. Chicken Licken, based on an Old English fable, illustrated by Richard Johnson. One fine morning, Chicken Licken was playing in the meadow when thump, an acorn fell on his head. Good gracious, cried Chicken Licken. The sky is falling down. I must go to the castle and tell the king. Chicken Licken was walking down the lane when he met Henny Penny. "Where are you going, Chicken Licken?" asked the curious bird. "The sky is falling down," replied Chicken Licken. "I'm going to tell the king." Henny Penny stopped pecking seed and turned her head to one side in dismay. The sky was falling down. She didn't like the sound of that at all. "I will go with you," she decided. So Chicken Licken and Henry Penny set off to see the king. The birds flapped and waddled down the lane as fast as their legs would carry them. A little further on, they met Cocky Lucky. "Where are you going, Chicken Licken?" asked the curious bird. "The sky is falling down," replied Chicken Licken. "I'm going to tell the king." "I will go with you," said Cocky Lucky. So Chicken Licken, Henry Penny, and Cocky Lucky set off to see the king. A little further on, they met Ducky Lucky. "Where are you going, Chicken Licken?" asked the curious bird. "The sky is falling down," replied Chicken Licken. "I'm going to tell the king." "I will go with you," said Ducky Lucky. So Chicken Licken, Henny Penny, Cocky Lucky, and Ducky Lucky set off to see the king. None of the birds noticed someone else peering through the trees. A little further on, they all met Drakey Lakey. "Where are you going, Chicken Licken?" asked the curious bird. "The sky is falling down," replied Chicken Licken. "I'm going to tell the king." "I will go with you," said Drakey Lakey. So Chicken Licken, Henny Penny, Cocky Lucky, Ducky Lucky, and Drakey Lakey set off to see the king. A little further on, they met Goosey Lucy. "Where are you going, Chicken Licken?" asked the curious bird. "The sky is falling down," replied Chicken Licken. "I'm going to tell the king." "I will go with you," said Goosey Lucy. So Chicken Licken, Henny Penny, Cocky Lucky, Ducky Lucky, Drakey Lakey, and Goosey Lucy all set off to see the king. Chicken Licken and his friends hadn't got very far when they met Foxy Loxy. "The sky is falling down," announced Chicken Licken. "We're going to tell the king." Foxy Loxy grinned. "Let me show you the road to the castle," he said. But instead of going to the castle, Foxy Loxy led the birds down the stony path to his den. "Yum yum," he laughed, cooking poultry pie for supper. Poor Chicken Licken. Henny Penny, Cocky Lucky, Ducky Lucky, Drakey Lakey, and Goosey Lucy never got to tell the king that the sky was falling down after all. The end. The Wizard of Oz, based on the children's novel by L. Frank Baum, illustrated by Richard Johnson. There was once a farm set in the wide, windswept plains of Kansas, America. A little girl called Dorothy lived on the farm with her aunt, her uncle, and her little dog, Toto. Dorothy had no brothers or sisters to play with. Toto was her only friend in the world. One morning, Dorothy's aunt and uncle went out early to work in the fields while Dorothy stayed in the farmhouse with Toto. Suddenly, a swirling tornado tore across the farm. "Help!" cried Dorothy, clinging on to the little dog. The tornado lifted the farmhouse right off the ground, carrying it high up into the skies. The house spun round and round in the air. It finally landed with a bump in a meadow full of flowers. "Where am I?" wondered Dorothy. A beautiful lady appeared. She wore a golden tiara and a silk gown. "Welcome to the land of Oz," she said gently. "I am the Good Witch. I want to thank you for killing the Wicked Witch." Dorothy looked confused. Surely she hadn't killed anybody. The Good Witch led Dorothy back to her farmhouse. Dorothy gasped in surprise. A witch's legs were sticking out the bottom of the building. The good witch pointed to the wicked witch's magic shoes. When Dorothy looked down next, the shoes were on her own feet. They fitted perfectly. "I want to go home," she said. "Will you show me how to get there?" "You must go to see the Wizard of Oz," replied the good witch. "He lives in the Emerald City along the yellow brick road. The wizard will help you." Dorothy waved goodbye to the good witch, then set off along the yellow brick road with Toto. Soon they met a scarecrow. Dorothy told him she was going to the Emerald City to see the Wizard of Oz. "May I come with you?" asked the scarecrow. "My head is full of straw. I want to ask the wizard for some rain so that I can think." "Of course," said Dorothy, holding out her arm. A little further down the yellow brick road, Dorothy, Toto, and the scarecrow met a Tin Man. Dorothy told him they were going to the Emerald City to see the Wizard of Oz. "May I come with you?" asked the Tin Man. "I want to ask the wizard for a heart so that I can love." Dorothy nodded happily. Dorothy, Toto, the scarecrow, and the Tin Man kept walking along the yellow brick road. Suddenly, a fierce-looking lion appeared right in front of them. "Please don't hurt us," cried Dorothy. "We're just on our way to the Emerald City to see the Wizard of Oz." The lion leaped back in fright. He wasn't really fierce at all. "May I come with you?" he asked. "I want to ask the wizard for some courage." Soon, Dorothy, Toto, the scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the lion came to the Emerald City. The turrets, walls, and ramparts all sparkled in brilliant shades of green. A little man ran out to greet the visitors. "Please, can you take us to see the Wizard of Oz?" said Dorothy. The man led the new friends deep into the heart of the city. The Wizard of Oz sat in a chamber in the tallest tower of the Emerald City. He listened carefully as the friends asked him their questions. "Please, can you give me a brain?" asked the scarecrow. "Please, can you give me a heart?" asked the Tin Man. "Please, can you give me some courage?" asked the cowardly lion. The wizard peered at Dorothy. "And what about you?" he asked. "I just want to go home to Kansas," she replied. The wizard told Dorothy and the others to go and kill the last wicked witch in the land of Oz. If they managed to do it, he promised he would help them. The friends were walking back down the yellow brick road when the wicked witch's army of winged monkeys swept over their heads. The winged monkeys grabbed Dorothy, Toto, and the others and took them back to the witch's castle. The wicked witch trapped Dorothy and her friends in a dungeon. She made Dorothy scrub floors and wash dishes day and night, and refused to let them go until Dorothy handed over the red shoes. The witch knew that these magical shoes would give her great power. "If you don't give me the clothes," she snarled finally, "I will kill your little dog." Dorothy was tired and hungry. She threw a pail of water over the wicked witch. As soon as the water touched her skin, the witch shriveled and melted away to nothing. Dorothy and her friends made their way back to the Emerald City, where the Wizard of Oz kept his promise. He gave the scarecrow a brain, the Tin Man a heart, and the lion some courage. "Now I can think," gasped the scarecrow. "Now I can love," laughed the Tin Man. "Now I can be brave," cheered the lion. Dorothy looked down at Toto. "What about us?" she said to the wizard. "Can you send us home?" "I cannot help you," the wizard confessed sadly. "I don't know how to send you home." Suddenly, the good witch appeared. "Dorothy," she whispered, "you must ask your shoes to take you back to Kansas." Dorothy picked up Toto, closed her eyes, and clicked her heels together. "Shoes," she begged, "please take me home." Dorothy opened her eyes and smiled. She was back on the farm in Kansas. The old house was standing in the middle of the yard, just where it was always had done. Dorothy's aunt and uncle ran up to give the girl a hug. Toto wagged his tail. From now on, he and Dorothy would live happily ever after on their beloved farm. The end. This is a story entitled Heidi, based on the original Swiss tale by Johanna Spyri, illustrated by Tamsin Henrichsen. Once there was a little orphan girl called Heidi. She lived in a town in Switzerland with her Aunt Deet. One morning, Aunt Deet led Heidi to the window and pointed to the mountains outside. "Today, I am taking you to see your grandfather," she explained. "He lives way up there in the snowy mountains." It took all day to walk up the mountainside. On the way, Heidi and Aunt Deet met a young goatherd called Peter. Peter showed them the way to grandfather's cottage. "You will be staying here," Aunt Deet told Heidi. "I have to go to the city to work." "Please don't leave me," begged Heidi. Grandfather was a gruff man with a big beard. He seemed much too old to look after a little girl. Although she missed Aunt Deet at first, Heidi soon grew to love her mountain home. Instead of going to school, she played in this pasture with Peter. She even made friends with a little white goat called Snowflake. At night, Heidi slept in grandfather's hayloft. The fresh mountain air made her healthy and strong. Sometimes Heidi went to see Peter's grandma, who was blind. The old lady loved the children's visits. "Tell me a story," she said. Heidi made up tales about the beautiful plants and flowers that she saw in the mountains. She wished that she could read so that she could have even more stories to tell Grandma. Even though her grandfather wouldn't talk to the villagers further down the mountain, he was kind to Heidi and she loved him dearly. One day, Aunt Deet came back from the city. "Heidi," she said, "it's time that you went to school." "Where must I go?" asked Heidi. "To Frankfurt," replied her aunt. "You will stay with a rich family until you learn to read, write, and do sums." Grandfather's face fell. He got used to hearing Heidi singing and happy chatter around the cottage. "Does she have to go?" he asked. "I don't want to leave, Grandfather," sobbed Heidi. "Or Peter." Aunt Deet felt sorry for the girl, but she wouldn't change her mind. Aunt Deet took Heidi to Frankfurt. The city seemed very dirty and loud compared to the mountains. Heidi went to live in a smart townhouse. Aunt Deet had arranged for her to be a companion for a girl called Clara. Clara was sick. She stayed in a wheelchair all the time. Every day, Heidi pined for grandfather and Peter. Early one morning, a maid insisted that she had been woken by a ghost walking down the stairs. Clara's father and the family doctor decided to stay up all night to look for it. Just after midnight, there was a noise on the stairs. The doctor held his lamp up to see the ghost. "It's Heidi," gasped Clara's father. "She's walking in her sleep." The doctor carried Heidi back to her bedroom. "Sometimes people walk in their sleep when they are sad or worried," he said gently. "What is troubling you, little one?" Heidi explained how homesick she felt. "I like Clara very much," she explained, "but I can't live without my mountains." The next day, the doctor spoke with Clara's father. When he heard how unhappy Heidi had been, he called her into his study. "Don't be sad," he said. "I will help you to go home." After she had packed her bag, Heidi rushed up to see Clara one last time. "I'm looking forward to going back to the mountains," she told her friend, "but I will miss you." Clara reached for Heidi's hand. "I shall miss you too," she replied. "I will come and see you soon. I promise." When Heidi arrived back in the mountains, Grandfather and Peter were overjoyed to see her. "It's wonderful to have you back," they cried. Heidi hugged Snowflake and the other goats, then went to bed in her cozy hayloft. She didn't walk in her sleep that night because she was so glad to be home. I want to stay in the mountains forever, Heidi yawned happily. A few weeks later, there was a knock at the front door. It was Clara and her father. I promised I'd visit, said Clara. Father says I can stay for a whole week. Heidi was thrilled. She couldn't wait to show the goats, trees, and flowers to her friend. Only Peter was unhappy. He was jealous of Clara. When no one was watching, he pushed her wheelchair down the mountainside. The wheelchair was smashed to pieces. Then, I must try and walk, decided Clara. Grandfather and Heidi helped the girl to her feet. Slowly, carefully, Clara took her first trembling steps. By the time her grandfather returned to collect her a few days later, Clara was walking by herself. Peter rushed up to Clara. I'm sorry that I was jealous, he said. Can you forgive me? Clara wasn't angry. From that day on, Heidi, and Peter were best friends. The end. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, an age-old fairy tale made famous by the Brothers Grimm. Illustrated by Tanya Maiboroda. Once upon a time, there was a gentle king and queen who were blessed with a beautiful daughter. The baby had skin as white as snow, sweet red lips, and hair as black as ebony. I shall call my little princess Snow White, announced the delighted queen. Snow White was only a few weeks old when the queen suddenly died. The king was heartbroken. In time, however, he found another wife. The new queen was beautiful, but she was also cruel and hard-hearted. Every day, the queen would turn to an enchanted mirror in her bedchamber and ask, Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? The mirror always spoke the truth, giving the reply, You, my queen, are the fairest of them all. Over the years, however, Snow White blossomed into a lovely princess. One evening, the queen went to consult her mirror. As usual, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? She asked. My queen replied, the looking-glass. Snow White is the fairest. The next morning, the queen ordered her huntsman to take Snow White deep into the forest and kill her. The huntsman led the princess through the trees, but he couldn't bear to hurt such a sweet beauty. Run far away, he begged. If you come back to the palace, you will die. Snow White ran and ran. When the sun began to sink below the trees, Snow White came to a little cottage. It looked so snug and cozy inside. The princess couldn't resist opening the front door. In the kitchen, Snow White found a table with 7 little chairs. She tiptoed into the bedroom. Look at those 7 tiny beds, she gasped, wondering who might live in such a place. She lay down on the beds and rested her weary head. The cottage belonged to 7 dwarfs who worked in a mine. Deep below the mountains, when they come home, Snow White was fast asleep. What is this beautiful girl doing on our beds? They wondered. Snow White woke up with a start. Please help me, she begged. When the dwarfs heard Snow White's story, they promised to protect her from the evil queen. While the dwarfs went to work in the mine each day, Snow White happily cooked and cleaned in the cottage. Back at the castle, the queen went to her mirror. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? She asked. And the mirror replied, Snow White is the fairest of them all." The furious queen put on some old clothes and went out to the forest to find the princess. The queen knocked on the door of the dwarf's cottage, disguised as a peddler woman selling ribbons. "Let me put this pretty ribbon round your neck," she smiled. The queen pulled the ribbon so tight the princess could not properly breathe. But when the dwarfs got home that evening, they took the ribbon off and helped Snow White to bed. The queen was very angry when she discovered that her plan to kill Snow White had failed. The next day she dressed up as a different peddler woman and went back to the cottage. "Who will try my beautiful hair combs?" she cried, standing beneath the bedroom window. Snow White looked longingly at the lovely combs, but the dwarfs had told her not to open the door to strangers. When Snow White refused to let her in, the cunning queen left the prettiest comb outside the front door and went away. Snow White came straight down the stairs, then slid the comb into her hair. "Oh," she cried, falling to the ground. That night, the dwarfs discovered that the comb had poison on its teeth. They took the comb out and made Snow White well again. The queen didn't go to her mirror for many months. One day, however, her vain heart couldn't resist asking, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror's reply was simple: "Snow White is the fairest of them all." The angry queen stormed back to the forest. This time she disguised herself as a farmer's wife, tempting Snow White with a delicious-looking poisoned apple. As soon as Snow White bit into the poisoned apple, she collapsed and died. The dwarfs tended to her all night, but nothing could save their beloved princess. No potion or tonic could bring Snow White back to life this time. The forlorn dwarfs placed Snow White in a glass coffin so everyone could admire her beauty. One day, a prince rode by. He fell in love with Snow White the moment that he set eyes on her. "May I take the coffin?" he begged. "I cannot leave her." As the prince carried the coffin over the uneven ground, he jolted the casket. Suddenly, the apple in Snow White's throat was dislodged. She opened her eyes. Snow White immediately fell in love with the prince. Very soon, they were married in front of everyone in the kingdom. Only one person decided not to share in the royal celebrations. When she discovered that Snow White was the royal bride, the wicked queen ran out of the wedding in a blind fury. She was never seen nor heard of again. The end. Rumpelstiltskin, based on a traditional German folk tale illustrated by Marina B. Ray. There was a foolish miller who boasted that his daughter could spin straw into pure gold. After a time, the king got to hear of his stories. "Let me see this girl," he demanded. The miller brought his daughter to the royal court. The king decided to put the miller's boast to the test. He led the maiden into a chamber piled high with straw. "You have one night to spin this straw into gold," he said, pointing to a spinning wheel. "Finish your task by daybreak, or you shall die." The miller's daughter began to cry. She knew that her father had lied. But what was she to do? Just then, a strange little man walked into their room. "If you give me your necklace," he said, "I will help you spin this straw into gold." The girl handed over the trinket at once. The little man worked all night. By morning, the room was heaped with spools of golden thread. The stranger slipped away before the miller's daughter could even thank him. When the king returned, his face lit up. "Come in here," he said. "Now I want you to turn all of this straw into gold." When the king had gone, the miller's daughter hung her head. This room was twice as big as the one before. At that moment, the little man appeared. "If you give me your ring," he said, "I will help you." The girl quickly agreed. By the next morning, the man had turned all of the straw into pure gold. But when the king knocked on the door, the stranger sank back into the shadows. The king was delighted at the sight of such riches, but he wanted even more. He led the girl into a room stacked up to the rafters with straw. "If you can spin all this into gold," he vowed, "you will be my queen." When the king had gone, the miller's daughter stared helplessly at the spinning wheel. She didn't know what to do. "What will you give me to help you this time?" cackled a voice. The strange little man was standing into the doorway once again. "I have nothing left," sighed the girl. The man gave her a sly smile. "Promise me your firstborn child," he said. "Then I will help you." "Yes," replied the desperate maiden. "I will give you the child to you." The mysterious stranger immediately set to work. The wheel spun all night as he weaved bobbin after bobbin of golden thread. When the last piece of straw had been spun, he exited the chamber and slammed the door. The king was overjoyed when he saw the piles of golden thread. He decreed a week of celebration and a sumptuous royal wedding. Everybody in the land tuned out to see the king marry the miller's daughter. Soon, the couple were blessed with a child. The queen adored her baby prince, but when the child was only a few weeks old, the strange little man appeared in the royal nursery. "I'm here to collect what I was promised," he sneered. The queen begged the man to change his mind, but he refused. The little man decided to give the queen one more chance. "You have 3 days," he said. "If you can guess my name at the end of that time, you shall keep your precious child." The terrified queen said to her courtiers, far and wide. The men asked everyone they met to tell them every unusual name they could think of. Every evening, the courtiers rode back to the palace with a long list of names, but the queen didn't have the faintest idea which one to pick. On the last evening, one of the queen's courtiers spied a campfire in the forest. It was the little man. The courtier hid behind the tree as the little man sang. "The queen will never win my game, for Rumpelstiltskin is my name." The man rushed back to tell his mistress. When the little man came back on the last day, the king and queen were waiting for him. "Now, let me think," smiled the queen. "Could your name be Rumpelstiltskin?" The little man stamped his feet with such fury and he cracked the tiles. With a shake of his fist, Rumpelstiltskin ran out of the room and was never heard from again. The end.